All right, race fans. CSP number 1 Cat4 2023 race breakdown. Average speed 24.4 miles per hour. That should give you a hint if you know this race, how this one turned out. Average power 239 watts. Normalized 269. What I learned. I am not strong enough for solo and YOLO. I sent it to the end of this race. It wasn't strong enough, and patience pays. So let's get into the footage here. Actually, right off the bat, here, lap 1. Just after the start, things have gotten strung out, and I'm going to have to do a little bit of work here. And I don't know if it's necessary now, looking back, hindsight here. Don't follow the wheels around on this one. There's a gap doing 500 watts out of the turn. I could have been a little more patient. Got on his wheel as he came around on there in the green. Or here, this man here could have gotten on his wheel. So pushing through this and trying to get caught up with that lead pack. I don't want to get dropped. I spent all last year getting dropped, and that was not fun. So I finally get on Lane's wheel here, and I don't do a great job of holding it. It's windy. We're doing 300 watts, sort of going downhill and only doing 27 miles an hour, 26. A lot of work, not a lot of benefit coming from it. Wattage coming down now, but still spiking over 300, sitting in the draft here. Finally, relaxing a little bit, starting to slow down. I don't know if I needed to do all that work. Brakes don't stay away here very often. And it was the first race of the season. People are going to be a little excited, but still spiking over almost 400 watts there. Right here, coming down to the bottom of the first turn. You can start to see everybody on the front starting to slow down. Could I have saved some energy? Yeah. All right, fast forwarding here a little bit to the start of, just past the start of lap 2. And you see that there's been a little bit of a gap that's formed. And I found myself a little bit out of position, a little too far back, and I'm going to have to do work yet again to stitch this back together. Heart rate's at a 175 early in the race, over 700 watts. Just, this is being out of position. Brakes don't last here, but look at all this time I'm spending out in the wind. As I said earlier, it's windy, doing almost 400 watts through the chicane here. And this is the downhill portion on the back side where we're going this direction. It's just unnecessary energy being spent here. I stitch it back together. If I had been in a better position, followed Lane like I had been through the first lap or so, or tried to follow Lane like I should have been doing, I would have been in a better position. But you see here, almost hitting 180 on the heart rate. And finally, it starts to calm down. But again, I'm like, there's another 2 off the front. But you see, I pulled the whole pack with us, and I don't have a rear cam, but all these strong hitters coming through. Luke, who ends up winning the series, I think he actually wins this race too. They're on the Specialized there, sitting at the front. He's a super strong rider. And just, I could have saved some matches. Make somebody else do some work. So, it's all back together now, almost. We're letting those couple hang and dangle off the front. It's windy. And could have saved some energy here. And everybody sits up because now we're into the uphill portion. I think we're almost in like a cross headwind at this point. And we're doing 200 watts going 17 miles an hour after doing 800 watts down the hill. Just not necessary. So, going to jump forward here in a little bit. All right, so we're setting up into the preem lap here. 3 laps in, and I do something silly. I didn't want to work, and I'm going to end up having to do a lot of work unnecessarily. So I didn't go with the initial sprint, and look at how strung out it gets and how much I'm going to have to end up doing here in terms of wattage. Holding 300 watts. My FTP about this time is probably 270-ish. 300, 400 watts. Heart rate's already at 180. 3 laps. Now going into 4 laps into the race. And don't get on his wheel because he's gapped. And we're still doing 300. Oh, I'm starting to get tired here, starting to struggle. They're slowing down, luckily. Now, hindsight, if they had just pushed as a group, they probably could have blew this race entirely up at this point. because there are quite a few racers behind me. Still at 179, I'm doing 150 watts. My heart rate's not coming down. Luckily, my teammate Anthony comes around, and I don't get on his wheel. Man, wasted opportunity there. Luckily, I know I can corner pretty well, and I know that the group generally doesn't pull away. I did all of last year getting dropped, but I know that most of the time splits don't happen. Still having to do 400 watts, essentially downhill. Did a little recovery through that turn. I catching up with Anthony again, and he's probably working really hard at this point. So, I tell him to get on my wheel as we try to close down this gap. But they're finally sitting up here. But if I had gone with that group, we would have been fine. But one thing I do here is just waste the energy that I had. Could have come around all around the outside, but I'm pretty spent at this point. 176 heart rate. It's coming back down pretty quickly. Luckily, I came into the season with some really good fitness, but just wasted energy again trying to close this gap that I allowed to happen to myself by being out of position. All right, jumping forward 5 laps here to lap number 9. Every 3 is a preem at this series, and it's starting to get strung out. People are starting to push down the hill. You can see that my heart rate's well recovered. We sat up as a group for a long time. People were not pushing this first race. That's going to happen at the start of the season. Not everybody's in great shape, and everybody's trying to race strategically. So they're not going to put out watts that they don't need to. I should have probably followed that direction a little bit better. But I'm ending up following Luke here, who's super strong. Didn't know it at the time, but that spot right there, okay, get back in. Just stay in the draft. Really critical. Coming through 162 heart rate for me is I can do that all day long. So I'm not really worried about it. Feeling really strong. Just sitting in the draft. Could I have been tighter in here? Yep. I feel this spot pretty good though. Top 8, 10 riders. The start of the race, we see you got one off the front there that's starting to push, but we're going to come into the uphill portion and the sprint. And the start of the season, I didn't go for any of the sprint points. Just wasn't my thing, wasn't quite ready. I wanted to make sure I didn't get dropped. And just staying with the top 15 or so racers. You see Keith coming around the side there in the orange jersey and doing 400 watts, 22 miles an hour, up this hill portion into a cross headwind. And it's getting strung out. We're doing good work, but I'm staying in the draft really well here. I'm really happy with how I was positioning. Learned a lot from last year. Staying in tight right on this wheel. Still have to do 300 watts sitting in the draft. This hill is it's a false flat hill. It's not as easy as it looks, especially at race speeds, to keep the wheels in front of you. So still, look at that gap that happens there. Top 5 get points as we come in here to 3 laps to go, essentially. But I'm staying tight, staying on the wheels. Getting a little worried though, going to get dropped. But that pattern of the sprinters never pushing the envelope there and really blowing up the race. I knew that was going to keep coming. Still had to push some watts. Heart rate's at 175 and manageable, but I think I could have probably been in better position if I had stayed towards the top 5 or so and gotten myself some preem points. But good position going into the few final laps here, and going to jump ahead here to another important phase of the race. So just about a lap later here, coming into 2 laps to go, and feeling really good. Heart rate's well controlled at 163, only doing 250 watts, sitting on a wheel really well, and start to see a little bit of a gap open up there in front of me. And I let too much of a gap form here, but I'm not trying to do too much work. I learned from mistakes from last year and from earlier in this race, and I'm going to let other people do work. But here shortly, you'll see that there's a gap that forms. Luke sends it off the side, and Lane Lane goes with them. A few people go, and I don't want to do any work. I'm going to let other people, chase it down. But I'm still doing 500 watts. Now I'm going to go. I'm going to go now. It just didn't make any sense. It's too late. Too much work. I do hold speed through turns really well, and it's all for naught. But I'm still doing 500 plus watts, 2 laps to go really here, and everybody sits up. Splits just don't do anything here. Did I need to do 500 watts twice to close this down? And then, more than anything, I use my brakes. Just keep my momentum going. Come around to the front, sit up if I don't want to do anything, or push the envelope there. My heart rate's well controlled, and I'm not really holding the wheel. I'm sort of sitting on the outside, doing 200 and something watts around the turn. Now, coasting down to 100. Heart rate's 165. I could have sat in and done, 150, but I'm not behind a wheel. I'm in a position to be able to pounce, but now I'm behind the wheel, and now I can do the 100 watts, the 50 watts, the 60 watts, and just sit there. Nobody wants to do work in these races unnecessarily, so we're all trying to be strategic. Wasted energy there. And you didn't have to wait long for me to make my next mistake. And it's sitting at the front, 19 miles an hour into a headwind. I'm feeling really good. Heart rate's at 160. And this is where I'm just impatient. I'm still doing 350 watts. I didn't need to be at the front, but I'm feeling good. I'm feeling excited. I'm, for the first time, actually fit. I spent all of last season really just not fit at all. Down a whole bunch of weight. And things are just feeling easy at this point, and I'm excited. And we're coming into, and the wind had shifted a little bit, and it's pretty much blowing due east now. So this top portion here, I'm going to have wind at my back. And nobody's wanting to do work. And I look back here, and I say, screw it, let's go. And man, I send it. I send it pretty good. My heart rate's up to 170. I'm doing 300 watts, 27 miles an hour, picking up speed, 400 watts now, 500. 30 miles an hour on this back, the top stretch up here. It's got a little bit of a roller. Just trying to hold my momentum. 176 heart rate. Starting to creep up there. I think I probably, looking back, hindsight, at the end of the season, if I had really pushed and done 800 watts instead of 500, I could have gotten maybe a big enough gap. Because you're going to see me ride this all the way down. And I take this turn hard. Doing 300 watts in. And I lean the bike pretty far over. Come out actually with more speed than I went in. And then hit it again 500 watts. Maybe a 600-700 watt could have gotten me enough there. And at this point I'm looking back. And my teammate Anthony after the race tells me that he had gotten to the front and actually sat up, which was an awesome strategy. To slow everybody down, make everybody else do work. And I hit it again here. Trying to get arrow, you can see my hands are off the tops now into the drops. And I'm holding it through the chicane. Really trying to hold this speed. The wind's a crosswind now, really strong. 29 miles an hour is not bad for a solo person down the back of this. Not going to say it's fast, but it's not bad. 27. Starting to struggle. 183 heart rate. Still doing 350 watts. Feeling okay, but it's starting to hurt. Starting to hurt here. 280. I'm wondering where the gap is. Where's everybody else? I look back. See it's still there. I give it some more gas. Get it back up above 300. Almost hit 350 there. 183 heart rate. Holding strong. My max is right around 190. And I'm still pushing. I'm pushing as best I can. It's at 184. And sustained for, over a minute now. 400 watts. Now we're into the uphill. And this is where if I had been patient and waited, how much of that energy that I had could I have used to get with the sprinters here? And you see that all of these folks are better set up. They saved a whole bunch of energy. They didn't need to do any work. Well, I did a ton. And I try to get on, do 500 watts, but I'm at 187. I'm pretty much maxed out, 188. And this is not going to happen now. Did I blow up the pack that was back there? Yes, absolutely. The top 20 or so racers followed me, but they all got the draft and I didn't. Did a whole bunch of work, and I'm trying to finish out here, but that's pretty much the race. I sent it at the top. Probably not the smartest strategy. Definitely not the smartest strategy. Could have sat in and gotten some sprint points there at the end, but really happy not to get dropped, not to get lapped. I was double lapped first time last season. So that's the race breakdown. Thanks. Have a good one.